We must hand down a good tradition, Geronda. Why is it that in some parts of Greece people are really good? Well, it is probably because good people had lived there and left a good legacy, and others are now carrying on with this good tradition. It's not because the soul produces good people. When a certain town or region creates a good tradition, or even a bad one, that is what is carried on. In Epirus, there was a village near the Albanian border where the villagers attended every single service, Vespers, the Divine Liturgy, even Apodapnon. It was, how does one say this, a heavenly life. They lived in heaven in this life and they will live in heaven in the next. They benefited not only themselves, but they also benefited future generations by having established a good order, a good line of continuity. When new generations are born into a good tradition, it will remain a good tradition. Close by was another village where people had the habit of stealing. The village had only produced one priest, and even he was stealing icons from the church. There was nothing wrong with the soil. The villagers had bad habits. This bad course was handed down, and it is this bad tradition that continues. It will take hard work for a good tradition to take place there. You see, when someone has a bad character, people will try and persuade you that he is not really from their town. They want to know where his family originated. But when someone is a saint, everybody rushes to claim him as their own. Take Saint Cosmas Aitolos. Even though he came from the southern part of Greece, people here in Epirus call him an Epirot because his father was born at the Gramenochoria villages of Epirus. The saint had no say. I once met a family man who used to move one of his fingers nervously every time he spoke. His children would do the exact same thing when they spoke. Children will imitate their parents' habits. They will copy them exactly. It is important to copy only what is good to avoid perpetuating bad habits. I remember a man who had entered an idiorhythmic monastery to become a monk, but he did not feel at peace there. "Stay a while, my son, and things will change," his elder said to him, and his son replied, "Geronda, how will things change? The disciple of elder so and so is exactly like this his elder, and the disciple of that other elder is also exactly like him. How can things ever change? There is a bad habit in a monastery or in a monastic community, and young monks do not have the good kind of concern and only copy what they find in place. They end up perpetuating what is wrong. If on the other hand the good concern exists, then it's possible for a bad situation to change and become good. Thus both good and bad habits can be inherited. I have realized that all the things that have come down to us, either from the fathers or from the Tipika, the ancient rules and practices, are like leftovers from the grape harvest. We must be careful to save some yeast. As Christians, this is our duty. We do not have the right to pass down a bad tradition. A few years ago in Geneva, there was a gathering of theologians and university professors in preparation for a synod. They decided to abolish the fasts for Christmas and the Holy Apostles, as well as 2 weeks from the Great Lent fast because most people do not observe them. Some professors from Greece were also at this conference. When they came and told me, I was very upset. I was beside myself. Don't you realize what you are doing? If someone is sick, he is allowed to eat. He will not be given a rule canon. If someone is not sick but breaks the fast out of weakness, All he needs to do is humble himself. Forgive me, Lord. He should say, I have sinned. Christ will not hang him. If he is not sick, however, he should not break it. Those who don't care about fasting are free to not fast, so there is no problem. But if we do away with a few fasts in order to please those who don't care to keep them, how will we know how the next generation will be? Maybe they will be better than us and better able to strictly observe the fasts. What right do we have to do away with these fasts which pose no problem? Catholics only fast for 1 hour before Holy Communion. Are we going to follow in that spirit, blessing our weaknesses and our faults? We don't have the right because of our weaknesses to make a Christianity to our measure. It is important to keep the order of the Church even for the few who can observe its traditions. If a person is sick and away from home, he should eat where others cannot see him and be scandalized. He can eat his yogurt, for example, at home. A man said to me, "That is hypocritical. Why don't you go and sin in the town square in order to be more honest?" I replied. You see how the devil puts things to them. We want to create an orthodoxy according to our own standards, and to interpret the fathers and the gospel as we please. Today, when we have so many highly educated Orthodox men and women, orthodoxy should shine. Look at what Saint Nicodemus the Hagiorite accomplished. He wrote so many homilies and books, all the Synaxaria of the saints. He knew entire libraries by heart, without photocopy machines and computers. We must do our best to be true Christians. Then we will acquire a spiritual sense. We will care for orthodoxy and for our country, and feel the need to fulfill our obligations as Greeks. We will be interested and concerned, and pray for their good. However, if others have to tell us, now be interested in this, now in that, and so on, it would be as if we were square wheels that must be constantly pushed in order to progress. The point is that we must push ourselves from within, then we will roll nicely like a round wheel. And if someone becomes a good Christian, he will push himself from within, and then God will inform him about more things than those who study. He will know not only what others write, but also what they are thinking of writing. Divine enlightenment will come such that all his activities will be enlightened. We have no right to eliminate the inheritance that Christ bequeathed us. God will hold us accountable. This small nation of ours believed in the Messiah, and we are granted the blessing to enlighten the whole world. The Old Testament was translated into Greek 250 years before the coming of Christ. Think of how the first Christians suffered. Their lives were constantly in peril. And now, when it is safe to enlighten other nations, we are so indifferent. Today, we owe the peace we have to those who come before us. Do you know how many of them sacrificed their lives? Without their sacrifice, we would have nothing. I can't help but make this comparison. How is it that then, although their lives were in danger, people held on to their faith, and how it is that today, when there is absolutely no pressure or any risk, we lose our faith and put it on the same level with others? Those nations who have never lost their freedom cannot understand. May God protect us from the defilements of barbarian invasions, I tell them. Why? They reply. What's going to happen to us? Just listen to them. You should not be lost people. And yet, that's how many think today. Give them money and cars, and they will not care about faith, honor, or even their own liberty. We Greeks owe our Orthodox faith to Christ and to the holy martyrs and fathers of our church. We owe our liberty to the heroes of our country who shed their blood for us. During our times we must honor this holy heritage and keep it alive, and not destroy it. It would be such a shame if our nation were to disappear. What we are seeing now is similar to what happens before a war. A draft goes in effect and personal letters are sent out. God is also sending personal letters to gather together people that will help save His creature. God will not abandon us, but we must do everything that is in our power. And for what is beyond our abilities, we should pray to Him for help.